As a kid, what's the creepiest, most WTF thing you ever noticed about another kid's family? Story 1. Content warning S assault. I had a friend when I was about 8 who always insisted that we play at my house. She was really sweet but nervous around my parents, especially my dad. Then one day we finally got to play at her place and I was so looking forward to it until I got there. My friend was nervous and afraid all the time, and you got the sense that the dad was just this glooming lion ready to strike from his chair in the living room. You almost had this feeling that he could reach you anywhere in the house from that chair, and the mother was on edge and overcompensating the whole way through. When it was time to go home, the dad blocked my way to the door, and my friend and the mother began telling him to please move, and he wouldn't get away with it. He finally moved, and I went home with a feeling that I suddenly understood why my friend wanted to come over to my place instead, so I stopped asking to go to her place. A few weeks went by, and one day she was at my place playing with me, and her big sister came over to get her. They went home for a few hours, and then my friend came back and went on playing with me when my mom asked her if she went home to eat dinner or she was eating here with us. And my friend said that she just had to come home to watch. And when my mother asked her what she meant by that, she told us that she just had to go home to watch her father having intercourse with her big sister. And she said it like it was a completely normal thing to do. My mom took her aside and asked her some more questions about what was going on, and apparently her dad used all the kids, 3 girls at the ages of 14, 8, and 4, as his personal intercourse dolls. My mom made arrangements for my friend to sleep over at her house, and the next morning when he had gone to work, she called the police and made sure the girls were safe when he was arrested at his job. He kept them in check by telling them that he would kill their little sister and their mother if they ever told anyone about their special relationship. He got his butt thrown in jail, and both parents lost the girls. The girls were put in a special care home, and they are thriving and happy adults today with kids of their own. And yes, I know exactly what I was spared that day by the mother and my friends pleading with him. Sorry for all the misspelled words. I just had a talk with my mom about this, and now to right some wrongs. First, I was 6 years old at the time, not 8. My friend had 3 sisters, not 2, and it goes like this with the ages. Oldest was 16 at the time. She was the one I had forgotten about, but in my defense, I never really saw her. She almost never left home unless the dad commanded it. The next in line was 14. She was the one my friend had to watch that day. Then came my friend. She was 7 years old at the time. And finally, the little one. She was 2 years old and was not molested to the extent of intercourse, but was only forced to watch and sometimes kiss it the first time around. My mom and dad were furious, and my dad wanted to go over there and cut his D off right then and there, but the other kids were still back home with that monster, so they promised my friend that they would wait until her sisters were safe. And about why my friend confided to my mother so sudden and without hesitation was because she had known my mom and dad for a good while, and they had made sure they had the clothes they needed in the winter, because my parents could never turn a blind eye to kids that needed help. And they have always been super good at creating a safe and loving environment for me and my sister and kids in need of a safe haven. One thing I remember clearly was that for a long time my friend stayed for the bedtime stories my dad would read to us in the living room, and my sister and I would snuggle up against our dad while he read the stories, but my friend sat at the other end of the sofa for the longest time, and one day she asked my dad out of the blue, "You're not a dangerous man, are you?" To which my dad answered, "Never in a million years. Dads are the ones who protect." Then my friend asked if she could snuggle too, and my dad said, "Of course." And since then, she snuggled with the rest of us when it was time for our bedtime stories. The monster was sent to jail, and the mother underwent a psych evaluation and was deemed to be a victim too, since she was only 15 when they had their first child, and was beaten and mentally tortured, so she was forced to have therapy so she could keep the youngest, and it all went well until the day he found them again and moved right back in to finish the job with the youngest, who was now 8 years old. And when that was discovered, he was thrown back in jail and the kid was taken from the mother. He also had the nerve to write letters to the other 3 kids telling them that he was being beaten in jail and was afraid for his life and that it was all their fault. But the worst part was that people around them knew about this and did nothing for various stupid reasons. The 14-year-old told a friend's mother who told no one because of stupid excuses, and a neighbor had apparently seen him having with the 16-year-old in their garden behind their house, and his excuse was that he thought no one would believe him. But every time someone told my parents that they felt bad for doing nothing and tried to give an excuse, they told them that they weren't interested in what they had to say because they chose to do nothing, and they had to live with the choices they made. What those girls had to go through, good Lord, and to anyone who ever thinks that they see anything, I don't care if you're not sure or you don't think people will believe you, you report it. I'm sorry, I know sometimes I get worked up with some of my comments and it might seem like an affectation that I'm putting on or something, but this story, that's just awful. But to anyone who might have gone through something like this, at least know that someone was willing to help, and now those girls are apparently adult, well-adjusted with kids, and it's important to know that things can get better and find someone you can trust and confide in. Going to take a few minutes before I read the next story, so there might be a bit of a change in tone. Story 2. One of my friend's parents used to give me homework to do. I'd go to her house and her mom would have some math or English assignment that she had come up with for us to do. Why did you keep going to her house? You didn't want to fail. Story 3. My next-door neighbor Kevin and I were buddies because we were the youngest in the neighborhood, and no one else would play with us. I would say this was when I was 9 or 10. Anyways, his parents both worked 9-to-5 jobs, and I remember them as being very nice but in a forced sort of way. I wasn't allowed to go in their house because they didn't let anyone in. Once I had to go to the bathroom, and as we were in his yard, he let me in. Every single doorway in the house had a curtain covering it. They made a fake hallway right at the entrance so you couldn't see the living room or the kitchen. I asked him why they were there, and he said his parents liked privacy. They also ate nothing but fast food. I remember the first time he had supper at my house, he was shocked and kept telling my mom he didn't have to do something like cook a meal for her children, that just because he came over. They moved kind of suddenly when I was around 11, and I remember he couldn't really tell me where they were going or why. He couldn't give me a number or an address to keep in touch, and he never called me, so it was sad. Witness protection program? Story 4. When I was a kid, I played at this other kid's house once or twice. The guy was adopted by what I imagined to be some of the weirdest, creepiest people ever. First of all, the house they lived in was pretty massive. That of itself wasn't so strange, but the fact that absolutely everything was eerily neat and clean was incredibly unsettling. I'm not talking about a house just being nice and clean. It literally felt like everything had just been installed the other day. One of the reasons everything looked so clean was that we weren't allowed to do anything. This kid had like a massive collection of Lego. I'm talking those huge building sets for like jets, etc., costing hundreds of dollars. But he wasn't ever allowed to play with them, let alone let someone else play with it. I believe someone put it together for him, and he was only allowed to look at it in his room. So naturally, playing at his place got pretty effing boring pretty soon, and I wasn't really the kind of kid to keep my mouth shut. Eventually, his parents would take out this hidden PlayStation 2 and hook it up to the massive TV in the living room. Great, right? Well, no. We were only allowed to play The Sims 2, and that would have been pretty good fun if his parents wouldn't have been policing us the whole effing time and wouldn't have made sure we don't do anything unusual in the game. Basically, we were allowed to simulate the most mundane and boring life imaginable. As if being in their home wasn't bad enough already. Just thinking back about that whole place gives me the chills. Such a robotic and weird environment. A while ago, I heard from an old friend that the adopted kid dropped out of school and became a junkie. Didn't expect that, but holy F, was I not surprised. Do you know what the kid did as a pastime before you came along? I imagine he was used to that environment, but what else was there for him to do? Sit around neatly and creepily with his parents while they just watched the journal according to a strict time schedule, or help his parents keep the house unrealistically clean, I suppose. Besides that, I think he was away from the house a decent bit. Come to think of it, one time I invited him to a barbecue at my place. He almost cried when he realized he was allowed to eat chicken wings using his bare hands without anyone caring. I'm all for people living how they want, and if those people wanted to live in a sterile Stepford home, that's all well and good. But if you have a kid and you just kind of refuse to let them be a kid, That seems really unhealthy. I mean, clearly, the poor guy became a junkie. Repress someone too much, and once they're free, they'll go all out. Story 5. As a 12-year-old, my 12-year-old friend showered daily with his mom and dad. What the F? 12-year-olds don't shower daily. Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. Story 6. I used to hang out with a kid whose family not only didn't have a litter box for the cat, but wouldn't pick up the cat crap either. The only reason I went over there was because he had an Atari 2600. I always came home with cat crap on the bottom of my shoes. Doesn't matter, played Atari. My buddy went on 2 dates with a woman he was set up with. This woman lived in a one-bedroom apartment with dozens of rescue cats. I say dozens because my friend could not count them. And by rescue, I mean she rescued them from the street. Apparently a lot were feral and a few had collars already, probably pet cats that she kidnapped. Catnapped? As a result, there were constant cat fights and not the fun kind. You can't just put feral cats indoors with declawed pets. There were litter boxes, but he implied that they didn't do too much good. He has a feeling that she was crazy before she started her collection, but that she got worse because of the weird brain problems that happen when you're exposed to that much cat crap. He said he called and reported her immediately after he left the apartment, but we don't know what came of it. I really want to know what happened to the crazy cat lady. Yeah, if you don't know, being around cat duties can give you toxoplasmosis. I don't know if it actually degrades the minds of humans, though. But the parasite does affect the mind of mice, making them not fear cats. I think it just makes humans really sick, possibly even deadly. Story 7. When I was around 8 to 9 years old, there was a girl in my neighborhood that hardly anyone ever saw outside of school. She was maybe a year younger than me. I tried talking to her a few times, and she was very, very shy. She was never allowed at other kids' houses. Reasonable, I guess. There were a lot of questionable people in our town. However, no one was allowed over at her house either, not even in her yard or on her driveway. This was because, in her words, her parents didn't like kids. Okay. One friend of ours managed to see into her house a few times. Apparently, all the furniture was always covered in plastic and everything was dark. We went maybe a month without seeing her outside of school, which was normal. One weekend, a friend and I saw her walking down the sidewalk, and she told us that her father had died. Her mom told her that he started bleeding from the inside after he ate some crayons she didn't clean up, and that it was her fault for not cleaning well enough. She lived in the same house until after high school. She hardly ever spoke when she did. It was just a whisper. She sort of just seemed like a small child a lot of the time, and how she acted and pronounced words. If I weren't just a clueless kid then, I probably would have said something to someone. She blamed her father's death on her. Man, that's effed up. Her dad started bleeding from the inside after he ate some crayons she didn't clean up. This is the most what the F part for me. Was her mom enough of a bee to completely fabricate a story like that, or was her dad flat out dangerously insane? I don't care if her dad was out of it and that eating crayons did kill him. You don't tell your daughter that. There is a line between don't tell someone how to parent their kids and take those kids away from that monster. That mom crossed that line. Story 8. So this isn't nearly as what the F as other stories on this thread, but I always find it really sad that my neighbor's dad sat on his lawnmower from dawn to dusk so he didn't have to deal with his family. Story 9. The parents did lines of coke around the table like it was nothing. I don't know what the hell was going on, but when I asked my mom, I wasn't allowed over there anymore. I wonder if some parents did this stuff on purpose. Like maybe they just really hated having their dumb kids' friends over, so they do something really conspicuously illegal or weird in hopes that the kid will go home and tell their parents. Then peace and quiet. And cocaine. Story 10. My friend's family never finished their drinks. They always stopped drinking before it was empty. I never understood why, and they would always avoid the question when I asked. The nightmares I had about those effing cups, man. Why the F didn't they just finish their drinks like normal human beings? They should get together with the family that pours their unused drinks back in the container. Unlimited drinks. Ugh. Story 11. I noticed that all of the rooms in this kid's house could only be locked from the outside of the room. I thought that only existed in horror movies. I didn't know until I was 17 that the fact that my parents installed a lock on my bedroom that could only be opened from the outside was unusual. That's a serious issue if there were ever to be a fire. I just realized I was given the room at the end of the narrow hallway farthest from any exits. You just realized your parents wanted you dead. Happy Cake Day. I wouldn't quite say that. I don't think the parents wanted their kids dead. I think the parents were just not very bright in a way that was potentially life-threatening. Not evil, just dumb. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.